Hello, and thank you for joining me for another virtual dose of vitamin Z, where we bring the Detroit Zoo to you. My name is Zahraa. I'm an education specialist at the Detroit Zoological Society, where we celebrate and save wildlife every day. Today, we're going to be talking about three grizzly bear brothers and talking about the story of how they came to the Detroit Zoo. Before we get started, Before we get to that, I'm going to talk a little bit about bears in general, and then later on I'll give you a craft idea that lets you focus in on each bear individually and spend some time looking at each one as an individual while using shapes. But before we get started, let's take a look at some vocabulary. So today I'll be mentioning the words hibernate and torpor, so we won't be talking about too many words. So grizzly bears are found in North America. So we're going to pull up my globe over here and point out Michigan, which is right over here where the Detroit Zoo is located. Grizzly bears are found west of that, towards the western part of the United States. Specifically, they're found in the states of Wyoming and Montana at Yellowstone National Park, around there. They're also found in parts north of that in Canada and then in Alaska. Alaska is probably the state, or is the state, with the most grizzly bears. Grizzly bears used to have a bigger range. Their range used to go down to Mexico and then further east this way, but because of habitat loss and hunting, their population has declined recently. All right, so let's take a look at some grizzly bears, see what they look like, and describe some of their features. So over here I have a picture of the grizzly bear brothers, and you can see they're pretty big guys. So grizzly bears are between 3 and 5 feet tall when they're sitting down on all 4 paws like they are here. When they stand up, they're much taller than that. They're actually about the size of a room from floor to ceiling, the height of a room from floor to ceiling, somewhere between 8 to 10 feet. Grizzly bears weigh somewhere between 400 and 1,000 pounds, and that's a big difference, and we'll get to a few reasons why there's a difference between 400 and 1,000 pounds. So what do they eat? Despite their really big size, most of their food is fruits and seeds and berries. They don't eat a lot of meat. 75% of their diet is vegetarian, with the remaining 25% being small rodents and fish. All right, so why is there such a big difference between their weight? So one reason for the difference is that during summer and fall, they're gaining weight so that they can store it for winter. Another reason is that male grizzly bears weigh more than female grizzly bears. So there's a big of a difference there, and then in the fact that they're gaining weight during certain seasons to store for winter and then losing weight during the winter. All right, so what do they do in the winter when they're storing that weight? So going back to my vocabulary words of hibernate and torpor, let's talk a little bit about the difference and what grizzly bears do. So grizzly bears do not hibernate. They do not spend the entire winter sleeping the way a squirrel does, in a really deep sleep like a squirrel does. What they do is they go through a process called torpor, and what happens in the process of torpor is it's not as deep of a sleep as hibernation. They are able to rouse more easily, they're able to wake up more easily, and they're able to let me get my thoughts in order for a second. They're able to rouse more easily, their heart rate isn't as low. Their heart rate still beats at a higher level than they would in a hibernation, and then they're also able to have a body temperature that's higher up than if they were hibernating. Animals as big as bears can't hibernate because it takes a lot of energy to drop their body temperature, because they have a lot of body heat because of their big size. So bears do occasionally wake up, as I mentioned, from their state of torpor, and one time they do that is when they when they're injured. So if somebody has injured a bear, they're able to wake up fairly quicker than a hibernation and get away if they can. Another time that they wake up is female grizzly bears will wake up when they're giving birth to cubs. And that's really important because that's the time of year that the cubs are born. And then they continue to wake up from their torpor state, check on their cubs as they're growing, make sure that they're okay, and then go back into their state of torpor. A hibernation is too deep of a sleep to allow for that. They won't be able to wake up and go back to sleep. So I'm going to say hi to Hudson, and then I'll continue. So grizzly bears cubs are born at 1 pound. So let's go back to looking at our grizzly bears right over here. So how do they get to from 1 pound to this size right over here? So 1 pound is about the size of a baseball or like a cell phone. It's really small. And then they get to somewhere between 400 to 1,000 pounds. So that's a lot of growing they have to do. They do this growing while spending time with their moms. So grizzly bear cubs spend 2 to 3 years with their moms growing. During that time, they're getting bigger, they're getting stronger, and they're learning to survive on their own. So these guys over here came to the Detroit Zoo when they were 10 months old as rescued animals. So as I mentioned before, grizzly bears have to spend 2 to 3 years with their moms growing. And unfortunately, these guys, when they were 10 months old, their mother was shot and poached by a hunter illegally, and they were left without anybody to grow with. They did not know how to survive on their own. They still were not at that age where they could go out into the wild on their own, and they didn't know how there was nobody around to show them how to be independent. So the Alaska Department of Fish and Game contacted the Detroit Zoological Society in 2011 in December and asked if there was a home here for them. The zoo said yes, and they've lived here ever since December of 2011. So let's take a look at their habitat. So here they are enjoying their habitat. As the grizzly bears grew, so did their habitat needs. They needed a lot of space. The bears are curious and they're strong and they really love to play. They're often seen moving logs around or digging up in their space. And DZS noticed that maybe they need more space. Maybe these guys could do better with a lot of space because they're very active and they really enjoyed all aspects of their space. So in 2018, DZS expanded their space. They took 3 habitats and turned it into one giant polar bear, grizzly bear space. I don't know why I keep doing that. Grizzly bear space for all of them to play around with. And this was really important because it gave them more room to hide, more room to play fight, and more room to move around and be themselves. They could behave more natural in such a large space. So this 20,000 square foot habitat was more naturalistic and provided a better experience and opportunity to thrive for these grizzly bears. Here's a video of the grizzly bears playing in their space. So you can see here that they're wrestling and just playing around. They are often doing that, and more often than not, it's one specific grizzly bear who likes to do that, and that is the Boo. Boo is the most energetic out of his 2 other brothers, and he's also the grizzly bear who's more likely to instigate rough play. So I have an awesome picture of Boo that I want to share with all of you. So let's see. There he is. All right, so looking at Boo, I had an idea that I wanted to make a portrait of Boo. And specifically, I wanted to spend time looking at his features and seeing what shapes are on his face and what makes him him. So after spending some time looking at the different shapes, the triangles, the circles, the hearts, the squares, whatever I found, I also needed a few other supplies. So you'll need some construction paper, some scissors, and some glue. All right, and once you have all of that, you are going to take some construction paper of different color and different sizes, because I made a colorful Boo, and then you're going to cut out different shapes and different sizes of all your pieces. Then you're going to take a piece of paper and you're going to rearrange your shapes in different directions and different orientations until you've made your bear. So over here for my boo, I used some circles, a heart, some ovals, some triangles. Some are facing up, some are facing down, all sorts of different shapes to make boo. And this also gives me a chance to share the story of boo as I'm displaying my artwork. Another way you can do it is just by drawing it out like this. So I just used some colored pencils to draw boo, again using those same shapes. Now doing this activity gives you a chance to practice some skills and concepts like your fine motor skills as you're cutting. It also gives you a chance to really observe an individual and notice the things that make that individual unique. And it gives you a chance to practice some shape recognition. So take a few moments, take a look at either Boo or Mike or Thor or any other of your favorite rescue animals at the Detroit Zoo and see what are the features and what are the shapes that make them them. And then get to crafting. Once you're done, we would love to see what you craft, whether you're hanging it up on a wall to display for anyone who comes by, or you're giving it away as a Mother's Day card or a card for someone special. Be sure to share it with us by using the hashtag DrawDetroitZoo and when you share it on Facebook or Instagram. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great day. Check back tomorrow at 11 for another virtual dose of vitamin C with Steven.